There are nearly 4 million public school teachers in our country. The majority of them, about 80%, are white. That same number, 80%, also refers to the number of white principals in the U.S. And when it comes to superintendents, specifically in New York, about 97% are white. A WXXI News investigation titled Degrees of Diversity dug into some of these disparities and their impact ultimately on students. Now, some education leaders in New York are challenging their colleagues, themselves, and their policies to combat what has been called, quote, racist, sexist, classist organizations. Joining me in the studio to discuss both efforts in more detail is Leslie Myers, Superintendent of Rockport Central School District, and Evan Dawson, host of Connections with Evan Dawson, and the journalist behind WXXI's Degrees of Diversity. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
So diversity, or rather a lack thereof, this is the connecting thread between the WXXI investigation and really this challenge turned initiative launched by Lavelle Brown, New York's 2017 Superintendent of the Year, someone that you worked with, Leslie.
Yes.
And that being said, Leslie, at its very core, what does this word, or why does this word diversity matter in public education?
Simply because the landscape of our school districts are changing very rapidly. If you look at just districts in Monroe County, you have the scope changing relative to race and ethnicity, particularly the Hispanic and the Latino population is rapidly increasing, as well as socioeconomic status. You have increasing numbers of families and students who are economically disadvantaged. And so the word diversity really is critical discourse right now for especially superintendents to tackle.
And this word is also something that you really dug into when it comes to WXXI's Degrees of Diversity. Some things that I found in listening to your reports, and correct me if I've got anything wrong here, 5 school districts in Monroe County have absolutely no African-American teachers. And you also talked to a superintendent who said in his 20 years as an administrator, he maybe had only 2 candidates of color apply for teaching positions. Yep. That alone, those 2 things would make anyone's mouth drop, I would think, or I would hope. What else did you find, did you discover in your reports?
Well, first of all, it does matter. There's a lot of research that shows it matters because students of color, when they don't have teachers, administrators, people on the staff who look like them, who can share their experiences from a racial or just a diversity standpoint, they suffer in terms of test scores, 3 to 4 points lower on the main subject. So they suffer when it comes to attendance. They suffer when it comes to graduation rates, later incarceration rates. All of those things have been research. We know it matters. But sometimes you've got white parents in the suburbs who will kind of tell you, well, we moved here because we wanted the better schools, or they're a little suspicious of diversity. What we also know is their students, their kids are being hurt by not being in diverse environments. There is research that shows kids benefit from having students of color around them, teachers of color around them, administrators of color, and they're hurt in various ways. So it's not a zero-sum game. It's not just the students of color who are being hurt by not having teachers or administrators. It's also white students. They're not going to be hurt. In fact, they're going to be benefited if we see more diversity.
Earlier this week, I met with Ithaca Superintendent Lavelle Brown. He's the brainchild behind an event taking place next month titled Diversity Symposium of Thought Leaders Cultivating Excellence and Equity. I know, Leslie, that you will be attending this event. So he was inspired to challenge his colleagues, he said, when he won the 2017 New York Superintendent of the Year award. He said he looked out in the crowd, he saw his family, he saw you, he saw very few people who looked like him, and he said something must change. And I want to show you a little bit of a clip, what he told me earlier this week. We'll take a look.
We all have blind spots, we all have prejudices, but we oftentimes don't want to address them or recognize them or talk about it. Conflict, we all are conflict averse, particularly in education. So to engage in a conversation like we're going to have in December about how we aren't inclusive, how we are racist organizations, classist organizations, it creates conflict. And we don't like that. And until we can engage in conflict that's trusting and cooperative instead of competitive, we will always get the same things. What's happening in our state, what's happening in our school districts, in our organizations, it's all in our policies. In our district, we've been looking at every policy from an inclusive, culturally responsive, and loving perspective. And when doing that, we see in writing how we have built, sustained racist, classist, sexist organizations. I will feel that the 2-day symposium is successful if folks leave frustrated, emotional, and angry about the 2-day session. if not feeling uncomfortable that we've all been complicit in what is racist and classist, sexist behaviors in organizations, if folks leave knowing that they've been a part of that, they should be uncomfortable and angry and frustrated and wishing to do something about it. So that's a good start for me, is that we can engage in a conversation that creates a sense of urgency in individuals that will lead to behavioral shifts and hopes of organizational shifts as we do this work in the coming months and years.
Leslie Lavelle called the education system in the state and school districts racist, sexist, classist organizations. He said it's a bold statement, will ruffle feathers, but it's the truth. Sure. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think about what Angela Davis said. And she said, I am no longer accepting the things that I cannot change. I'm changing the things that I cannot accept. And so when you think about even me entering the superintendency in Monroe County, I was the first woman of color to become the superintendent in 21 school districts. And so there's something that is obviously wrong there and that is concerning. And so I love the fact that we are going to have thought leaders come together from across the state to have really thoughtful conversations, courageous conversations, and really push the envelope. That's what we as educators are about, right? It's not about just talking about history. It's about pushing the envelope and really having conversations that are thoughtful and that are thought-provoking. And so certainly we need to look at the systems and structures that contribute to that, and that could be painful at times, but they are necessary and important conversations that need to be had. And
in looking at the systems, and Evan, when you spoke to superintendents, they were well aware of the issue, the disparity when it comes to this, but acknowledging it as an issue is one thing. Actually implementing steps to bring about change is another thing entirely. Did you see that? Did you hear that steps were being made to address this?
Largely, no. I think many districts said that they cared, but they kind of gave sort of a blanket statement that said, well, we always care about diversity at all levels and we're going to do our best. Some districts care a lot more than others, and you can see that. I would also say I would turn it on parents, and largely white progressive parents who think of themselves as progressives, but they still behave in ways that kind of entrench power structures that don't change. White people who move to suburbs and then say that they care about education or those kinds of things. Now, I'm not saying if you live in a suburb and you're white, you're a bad person, but I'm saying let's all think about the choices we make and ask us what's the root of all of this, because I think everybody has a role.
Right. So Evan talked to Rochester Teachers Association President Adam Urbanski about this, and he said it takes time. I mean, these kinds of things take time to bring about change. We hear that a lot when it comes to education. I understand that with certain initiatives and so on, but does it really take that much time to bring about diversity in schools? I'm interested in your perspective as a district leader. Is that challenging of a process?
It certainly is. It can feel like melting a huge iceberg. But what I am really excited about, we talked about initiatives from the top down. We have an initiative that's coming from the bottom up, and that's from the students. Tomorrow, we have 600 children from across the county who will be meeting together at an event called Rock to Change. And it specifically talks about addressing inequity in school and inequity in their education. So they will have very targeted and specific conversations as it relates to race. And I'm so excited about that. This is professional development that students have developed, that they will be leading and moving forward. And it doesn't get any better than that.
That's great. I know with your reports too, when you talk to students, they said we need to see change. We want the diversity. We're asked, and they said we need it. So that's fantastic. Well, we're out of time, but I want to thank both of you for joining me. We have to close for now, but thank you to my guests, Leslie Myers and Evan Dawson, for your time and for your respective work that you're doing in addressing issues of equity in our education system.
Thank you.
And to learn more about degrees of diversity, go to WXXInews.org.